Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Revert's World on Ahlul Bayt TV with our guest, Sister Fatima Hussain. And we have been discussing, or the Sister Fatima has been informing us about her journey to Islam. And we got to the stage where you're kind of half Muslim, half not Muslim, if you don't mind me saying so. And I remember you mentioned something to me earlier on about how, because your sister-in-law reverted, as you said, back to Islam, and she put on the headscarf, and this for you was something that you weren't really comfortable with in the initial stages.
Yeah. I remember my sister-in-law turning up, just turned up one day, and she had the hijab on. And it really sort of threw me, and it sounds bizarre looking back at it now, but it really did throw me. And I remember thinking, okay, she's come to the house, and that's fine, because she's still the same person underneath. But what happens when I go out and people are going to stare? You know, people know it's me, but she's different now. And I remember it was a real strange moment. And then we obviously went out together, like shopping or whatever it was. And the first time it was a bit strange, and the second time it was kind of normal, and the third time, and then, you know, and it was strange it's that realisation that she's exactly the same person. She's exactly the same person. You just don't see her hair. And why should anybody need to see her hair anyway?
Sure.
You know, and obviously respecting, you know, dressing modesty and having things like that. And it's like, well, you realise that I'm going out there and people are talking to me, but they're not talking to her. And it's like, well, the people that are talking to me, are they talking to me because I'm a nice person? Well, no, because how do they know? Because they've never spoken to me before. So what is the real reason for them talking to me? So obviously they see something physically which makes them decide they want to interact with me. Whereas my sister-in-law, you know, people choose not to interact with her. So what's the reasons, what's the difference between me and her? And I kind of realised that this hijab that she wore, and the modest clothing, because of course I think the misconception is that hijab's just what you wear on your head, but it's not, it's what comes from within as well. And what I realise is that actually this is protection for her. She's getting rid of all the trash that's coming up to her, talking to her on the street. And the people that are actually interested as to what's going on in her brain are talking to her, rather than, you know, people just coming up to you, you know, what's their aim? To get your number or something like that. So I realised that actually this hijab is a piece of material, and the people that stop talking to you because you wear it were the people that you didn't need in your life anyway. So I realised that this was a form of protection, and that this has been given as a gift from Allah to almost show your worth. You know, you keep covered because you're precious.
Yes.
And that's what I realised, you know, I'm thinking she's oppressed because she wears a piece of material. Well, who's actually the oppressed one? It's not her, it's me. Because when I go out, the first thing people are looking at for me is physically, do I want to talk to this person? That's what they're doing for me. Are they really interested in what's going on in my brain? No. So that's one of the things that I realised with the hijab. It's a privilege to wear it. And it's recognising your own worth, and realising that your identity as a woman is not your physical identity, but it's identity of what's inside you, you know, your knowledge and your skills, which is how it should be. That effectively makes men and women, how they should be treated equally, you know, both with the same amount of respect.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So it turned from, so the hijab for you was at first apprehension, and then it became appreciation for what the value of this, as you called it, piece of cloth was. Now you've mentioned Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam, and I remember you saying to me earlier on as well, off air, how Lady Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha played a pivotal role in your quest to find out more about Islam.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I come from a family of men. I've got brothers, and my parents have got brothers, and they came from brothers, and I obviously had my first daughter, which was, you know, obviously she was a girl, and I was like, wow, you know, that's quite like an amazing thing, because obviously I assumed she was going to be a boy. So I had this daughter, and I remember having her and thinking about my own life, and thinking that I had all these struggles in my life, so how am I going to make it different for her? How do you break the cycle of maybe, you know, when you're growing up as a girl in the West, for me in particular, I didn't feel I had any worth, spiritual worth. Like I said, you know, aesthetically you might be okay, but what about inside, which is the part that you actually have to live with yourself.
Yes.
I remember having my daughter and thinking, oh, I want to change things for her, and I want her to not have the chaos, that's the only way I could describe it, that I felt growing up as a female. But I didn't actually know how. So I sort of thought, well, now I'm working on my feet here, trying to think about how to raise my daughter. And I was pregnant with my second child. And what actually happened was we found out that it was another girl, which I was like, wow, you know, 2 girls, sisters, great. I never had sister, I always wanted a sister, and now I've got these 2 girls, which is really great. And I remember thinking, now I'm in a lot of trouble because I've actually got 2, and I'm now going to have to really think of some way I'm going to raise them so that they know their real worth, which is you know, what comes from inside, not from the outside. And I remember hearing the story of Karbala. It was one of the first things I actually heard when I was learning about Islam, and being, you know, amazed and thinking, oh my goodness, this is such an amazing story, and these people, you know, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the amount of things they did in order for us to have the religion today.
Yes.
And what I actually realised was that it was all due to one woman, which was Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her. And of course, what I realised then was that I sort of heard this name and I thought, well, who is this person? I obviously want to know more about her. So I then started to read things about her, and I realised that, you know, the Prophet didn't have a son, he had a daughter, and this was her. And through her, the 12 Imams came from her. And this, you know, it's fair enough to say that, you know, for Shias, the whole world was created for her. You know, she's the reason why we have an Imam still today that's, you know, alive in our quotation. So I started to read about her, and I read about her significance and how her birth was actually the start of the women's rights movement. When she came along, you know, that's what Islam brought, the rights for women. And it was through reading about her and reading about her life and her struggles and her piety that I could learn things as well. You know, she was a mother. So I remember reading about her and obviously being really inspired about her. And when I found out that my second daughter was a girl, and when she was born, I named her Zahra after Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her. And I realised that Islam, like I said, Islam was the first to champion rights for women. You know, in the 19th century in this country, in the UK, if a woman had a property and she got married, the property automatically transferred to her husband. So if her husband wanted to turn around and kick her out of the house, he had every right to do so. Whereas in Islam, that's not allowed. And a woman's not obligated to go out and work and provide for the family. And a woman's not, it's not a woman's role to teach the children Islam, for example. And I realised that actually Islam gave us all those rights that in this country we've only just got in the last 100 years. You know, a woman can go out and earn money, but she's under no obligation to share it. She can do what she likes with it. And so for me, reading about Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her, was probably the most inspirational thing. I mean, when my daughter was born, I called her Zahra because I felt that that's the greatest honour I can do for Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her, who's given me the religion I have today. The greatest thing I can do to honour her is name my daughter after her.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. That's brilliant. And so now you've become a Muslim, and obviously, you've named your daughter after Lady Fatima, as you said, alayhi salam. But yeah, I remember you mentioning something to me earlier on about how maybe in the initial stages you were a little bit extreme. I don't mean extreme in terms of your views. I just mean extreme in terms of how you were trying to interact with this new religion, how you were trying to ensure that you were doing everything exactly how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, I think I've heard apparently this is a common thing amongst Muslims. When you're told something that you feel like you've been waiting for me for the
All
last...
your life.
Yeah, my whole life. I've been waiting for this thing the whole my life. So as soon as I got given it, I wanted to make sure that I was like, I'm going to do this properly. So I went through this phase where I was like, I need to be praying all my prayers. I need to start right now, and I need to be doing all my prayers today and tomorrow and the following day until, the end. And I need to be fasting as well. Not only do I need to be fasting, I need to be reading the Quran every day. And I need to be reading about all the prophets. I need to be reading about all of the Islamic laws. And I went through this phase where I believed that, I was so desperate for the knowledge that I'd been craving that I had to do things right now. And of course, I think obviously what happens is you get completely overwhelmed and you're trying to run before you can even walk. And that's that's an experience that I personally had, which I've heard is quite common for reverts, just to go flying in there. We feel like
both feet first.
This is. I think we feel like we've been cheated out of all this thing that all these other Muslims have known about. So we're straight in there and we're trying to do everything. We want to do it now. We want to be able to do our prayers without having the book in front of us and all these things. And of course, that in the long run throws you and it sets you back, because you're human. You can't. Allah knows your capabilities and doesn't expect you to be doing everything at the drop of a hat like that. So.
Sure. So that's maybe one of the experiences that you've learnt, and I guess you would use that as advice to others, just
definitely.
To take one step at a time. Yeah. Obviously, all of these things are definitely very, very important, but obviously, as you said, walk before you can run.
Yeah, that's
sure.
right.
Sure. And I remember one sheikh telling me a long time ago as well that sometimes, I don't know about your own experiences, but sometimes when people give in da'wah to non-Muslims about Islam, they tend to focus on, right, and this is Islam, so they kind of give you a very short understanding of, right, we believe in one God and the Prophet and this book. By the way, you got to pray, you got to fast, you got to do this, and if you don't do these things, then you're doing something haram, it's a sin. And what he was saying was, well, actually, why don't you just focus on one thing, i.e., get them to understand the concept of Islam, get them to build up a relationship with Allah, get them to take the Shahada first, and then start telling about these things, not necessarily keeping them away from it, but maybe not focusing on it, not emphasizing it so much.
Well, this is the thing, it's not about how much knowledge you know, it's actually about the quality of knowledge you know. So for example, you could turn around and say, I converted to Islam 6 months ago, and I can do all my prayers, and I'm even doing my Qadat prayers as well, the prayers that I've missed, but you're not reading them properly, or you've rushed through them so much that you've missed something really important. So when you find, and then eventually 6 months, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, you realise that you was doing that wrong. And you think, well, why was I doing it wrong? Because I was so desperate to do it that you're just jumping ahead of yourself. So it's not about how much knowledge you know, it's the quality of knowledge that you actually have, and what you do with that knowledge that you have. I don't know all of. I haven't memorised a book on Islamic laws, but what I do know are the laws that are sufficient to me in my daily life. And when I don't know something, I can of course go back to, and it's just, I think that's really important, that especially for converts, or even those people that revert back, don't run before you can walk. So.
Sure. Thank you. After converting, so you're now a fully fledged Muslim and you're praying, alhamdulillah, and fasting, etc., etc. Did you get much opportunity to go out much and visit centres? And if so, what was the interaction that you got there? Or did you find it positive? Was it according to what you had been reading? Was your impression of Islam what you met in these centres or not?
I have to be honest and say that I was quite disappointed with what I,
experienced.
With what I experienced. the Islam that I had learned about and understood, there's lots of stories about converts in Islam. For example, Abu Dhar and Salman Farsi, may Allah be pleased with them. These are people that weren't born or didn't come from a specific literal area where everybody else came from. But they had, a huge impact. They had a really important role to play. So I knew that, as a convert, as a revert convert, that Allah made people similar to me so that I could learn from them as well. And when the Islam that I knew and the Islam that I understood, you're all under one umbrella. That's how I would describe it. You're all under one umbrella. You all pray in the same language, and that's the reason why you do, because your brothers and sisters like that. You speak this. You have one thing in common. That prayer that you do in the same language. When I actually went to centres and started interacting with people, I found it really difficult because even though you're all under this one umbrella, which might be Muslim or it might be Shia, there's all these diverse little groups within the communities that don't necessarily interact with each other. So for me as a revert, I sort of came to understand it's brother and sister, but people weren't treating me like I was a sister. And I felt like when I needed, help or guidance, it's not necessarily there. It's not necessarily there for reverts.
Sure.
And I think people that are born Muslim need to realise that it's their responsibility. If a convert comes to you or someone that's interested in Islam, that might be the only chance that you get to interact with them. So you need to make sure that what you're doing is welcoming them and being available to them for you to help. I was surprised to go into a community and see a division between the people from the Middle East and, say, the people from Pakistan. And they didn't really interact with each other, even though I had come myself from, a lifestyle where, I worked in an office and we all came under the name of the office, and we were all different shapes and sizes and colours and male and female, but we all interacted with each other, yet we hadn't, just simply because we worked in the same office. Yet when I went into a Muslim community, people in the community weren't interacting with each other, but they had more of a reason to do so because we're told, it says in the Quran, we've made you from different nations and tribes so that you may know each other.
Yes.
But it wasn't what I was seeing when I went to the communities. And as a revert, that's confusing because I felt like, okay, so, there's the people from the Middle East and they're the people from Pakistan, and here I am, the revert. So where does the revert go? And there's not that, they're supposed to be my sisters, but they don't treat me like a sister.
So for you personally, you could say that maybe cold shoulder would be too strong a phrase, but you just felt that you weren't welcomed. You just didn't feel like there was enough love.
Well, it was people didn't have the time. That's what it felt like to me. So it wasn't a case of that you're not welcome, because somebody always welcomes you, Assalamu alaikum and things like that. But it was almost like they were busy doing their things, which were really important. So, I guess for me, Islam became a journey between me and God, and that's what it was. There wasn't like a specific. So
there wasn't a support structure in place to kind of help you. From
my experience, no. I mean, don't get me wrong. I had friends who are very good to me, and they still are very good to me today. But when you can count them on both hands. Yes. And you think about how many.
Oh, you can count them on both hands.
I can count them on both hands. I'm lucky.
Use half of one hand, one finger.
I'm lucky. So,
no, I'm only joking.
But in London, you think there's all these Shias, and what I can count my good friend. I've got only so many telephone numbers or people's houses that I can turn up to for help. So, alhamdulillah, I guess again it comes down to quality, not quantity, in terms of the friends. But I think it's important that Muslims know if you're born a Muslim or you're a convert yourself. I mean, a convert knows anyway. But for those people that are born a Muslim, it's on them. The obligation is on them. Because I think if somebody comes to you, they've come to you for a reason, because Allah's given you that person. This person's there for you to help. So what are you going to,
Sure.
do?
Sure. Okay. So you mentioned to me as well about how you had to then go through a process of trying to decipher or trying to understand the difference between what is culture, what is religion. I remember you mentioning earlier on your first kind of interactions with Islam where people were saying, oh, we don't drink alcohol, we don't eat pork, and we fast the month of Ramadan. That's Islam.
Yeah.
Everything else
It's a bit hazy.
is just, anything goes type of thing. So, I mean, how did you go about this process of trying to understand the difference between culture and religion? Because it's always, it's not black and white. It's very grey in certain areas.
I think what you realised, what I personally realised, is I don't rely on, for example, a particular community or a particular set of friends. The most important thing is that you attain knowledge for yourself, and that where you're attaining the knowledge from, like, for example, hadith, the sayings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, how did the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, actually live himself? Is this, there's the Christians have a saying, you can get it on a wristband, it says, what would Jesus do? Well, we can do the same thing.
Yes, of course,
so, for example, I hear this a lot. For some reason, people associate this with Muslims, honour killings. That's what Muslims do. That's not what Muslims do. That never happened in the Prophet never would have allowed that in his time, and the Ahlul Bayt don't say that that's something that we can do. So that's not part of religion. So that's a cultural thing. So you've got to push that out. So, and I think also that it actually comes down to logic and having sense. Does this fit? Trying to get your child, your daughter married at 12 to whoever, does that fit with what Islam would teach us to do? Well, no, because it doesn't make logical sense. So I think that's a really important thing, is to have that ability to distinguish between, what would the Ahlul Bayt do? What would they do?
Good point.
So
good point. That's a very good point. Thank you. I must remember that for myself as well. You mentioned as well to me earlier on that you don't think that you chose Islam. You said that Islam chose you.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
It's much easier to be raised in a certain way and to continue doing what you're doing. It's a lot easier. People said to me, why would you want to make your life difficult? And you sort of think, well, how can you answer that? And I feel that I didn't choose the religion chose me. And I feel that, you have two options in life. Like I said, you have the easy path or you have the hard path. But at the end of the easy path is hardship.
Yes.
But at the end of the hard path is, it's easy. It's a comfortable life, or it's a peaceful life. And I feel like I really did try and not be a Muslim, which, astaghfirullah, doesn't sound like a good thing to say, but the reason I say that is because it was a lot easier for me to continue living the way I was living, eating what I liked, speaking the way I liked, dressing the way I liked. That is a far easier path to take, the path that I'm used to and the path that I come from and the path that society is, than for me to turn around and, 180 degrees, turn my back on my life, what it was. It's far easier, and the more I tried to resist and disagree with it, the more I felt I had to do it. It was like, how can you deny something that you can't fault? So I almost felt obligated, and not obligated in a way where, it was like I owed it to Allah because I had been given the knowledge. So
you couldn't turn away from the knowledge after it being given to you.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, that's something I could definitely relate to. How about your family? I'm sure you've been asked this question many times before. How did your family react to you becoming a Muslim?
The initial thing from my mum was, have you looked at other faiths? Which of course I said, like, yeah, I have. I've looked into other things, and this one makes the most sense to me. And it was almost like I think my parents, it was the hardest. I mean, they had this, which you would do as a parent. Where did we go wrong? That's what my mum was like. Where did we go wrong? What have we done that's made you decide to be completely different to the person that we raised you as? And I explained to my parents that I feel, for me, it's a credit to them because they have given me the ability to go out there and search for things. You know, I've not sat at home and been spoon-fed information. You know, this is what you do and this is who you are and this is what you're going to be when you're older. They've always, you know, given me opportunity to go out there, to question things, to have different opinions and different views to them. So, alhamdulillah, I can almost say I can credit my path to Islam to them because they've given me the ability to make the choice, whereas so many people don't have that choice. So.
And I'm sure it wasn't just about them encouraging you to be open-minded and to do your research. I'm sure, or correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it a case that they also gave you a moral framework so that maybe when you interacted with Islam, you know, it wasn't something totally alien to you. It related to your past, related to your upbringing, the personality that you were prior to Islam.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the one thing I realised about Islam is, you know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family was sent to perfect morals. He's the most, you know, perfect example of morals and how to behave in society, how to behave, you know, as a father, how to behave as a leader. All of these things, and of course the Ahlul Bayt as well. So, you know, Fatima Zahra, peace and blessings be upon her, was the perfect example of how to behave as a wife and a mother, and also like as a teacher and a guide. So, what I really sort of drew me to Islam was that it was a really peaceful religion, and it does tell you how to behave. And I think what shocked me was, I know from my own experience that my parents raised me in a particular way. And when I went into, I've been to some centres where Muslims go, and I've seen things that have really shocked me, behaviours which I know is not acceptable in Islam. Remember, one of the things that I saw not that long ago was a brother on the street outside a centre spitting on the floor, which for me is something really hard to see because I've been raised in such a way that, you know, my parents like, that's not allowed, we don't do that, we're not animals. So it was then that you know, obviously I realised that, you know, effectively I've been raised as a Muslim anyway.
Alhamdulillah.
Because I already have the morals and I already believe in, you know, I already believe in God. So I was already, you know, halfway there. You know, morals is a really big part of our character.
Yes.
So if we can't perfect that, then how can you perfect all the other things? So I already felt that I was sort of, you know, already there, which of course, again, I credit to my parents.
Alhamdulillah.
Because, you know, we come from a family where we queue and we're please and thank yous, and we're not, you know, we don't put litter on the floor and things like that. So alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much. We're going to end the show now, but I remember you saying to me as well that you became a better daughter after you became a Muslim. But just as a final kind of conclusion, what advice would you give to our viewers, be they reverts or born Muslims, from your good self?
The advice that I would give to anybody is that they should look at the religion they believe in, and they should see if they're actually adhering to what it says. So, you know, for example, how do they behave with their family? You know, how do they behave with their friends? You know, how do they behave as a human being in society? And obviously, all these things, I think, make people a better person. So, for example, if people really understood their religion, maybe you wouldn't have this division between the different cultures under Islam, which is then what I experience, which as a convert, then I get drawn into that, which it shouldn't be like that. So all I would say, obviously, to people is to know your religion, basically. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very, very much, Sister Fatima Hussain. It's been very interesting hearing your story, and I thank you very, very much for taking the time out to share it with myself and, of course, all of our viewers. This is obviously Revert's World, and on behalf of Ahlul Bayt TV, I once again thank Sister Fatima for coming on. If you have any comments to make with regards to the show, then please email us at revertsworld@ahlulbayt.tv, and we'll be here again next week, Wednesday 7 p.m. with another installment, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.